was handsome, he was talented, he was funny, and he adored me.
There's something delightfully wicked about the way Shirley Jones laughs these days. A low, silvery sound that carries all the glamour of the golden age of Hollywood with just a hint of mischief underneath. At 91, she's as radiant as ever, her eyes still flashing with that blend of sweetness and daring that made her America's favorite ingenue, and later, one of its most surprising storytellers. When the interviewer asks, "You've kissed some of the most handsome men in movie history, who really made your heart skip?" Shirley leans back in her chair, a slow grin spreading across her face. "Oh, honey," she says, "that's a dangerous question. But I suppose I've earned the right to tell a few secrets." She lets the words linger in the air, savoring the tension the way only a born performer can. "I've been lucky," she continues. "I worked in an era full of men who knew how to make an entrance. Tall, confident, impossibly charming. Some of them were pure gentlemen. Some, well, let's just say they acted like gentlemen." She laughs again, that musical trill of nostalgia and naughtiness. Her gaze drifts toward the ceiling, like she's watching a reel of memories only she can see. "There were men who could make you blush from across the room," she says. "Men who'd tip their hat, flash a grin, and suddenly you forgot every line you'd memorized. That was the magic of it. The chemistry, the fun, the unspoken dance." Then she leans in, lowering her voice to a playful whisper. "You have to remember, darling, I came from the time of charm, when a man didn't need to text you. He just needed to look at you the right way. And some of those looks, well, they stayed with me for decades." Her smile turns sly. "There were 7 of them," she says, tapping her finger against the arm of her chair as if counting each memory. 7 men who could melt your good sense faster than a spotlight on a summer night. I worked with some, flirted with others, and a few—" she pauses, eyes twinkling. "Let's just say they left quite the impression." She sits back, laughter bubbling again, full of mischief and grace. "You want names? Oh, I'll give you names, but be gentle with me. I was young, foolish, and surrounded by far too many beautiful men." 1. Gordon MacRae. Shirley's smile softens the second his name is mentioned. "Oh, Gordon," she says, her voice wrapping around the syllables like a fond sigh. "My first leading man, and what a leading man he was." She leans back, eyes bright with memory. "I was barely out of my teens when we made Oklahoma, and then Carousel. He was handsome, confident, and had a voice that could shake the walls. That baritone, my goodness. When Gordon sang, the whole world seemed to stop and listen. And when he looked at you, well, you forgot there was anyone else on that set." She laughs softly, the sound tinged with nostalgia. "He had that all-American charm. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a grin that could melt butter. But he wasn't just good-looking. He was kind, generous, funny in that understated way that sneaks up on you. We'd rehearse for hours, and even when we were both exhausted, he'd crack a joke just to make me laugh. And when he laughed, oh, it was infectious." Her tone deepens, a little wistful now. "He had this steadiness to him. He made you feel safe, even when the lights were blinding and the cameras were rolling. He could play the romantic hero without ever faking it. It wasn't acting with Gordon. It was connection. Every time he'd take my hand or sing one of those love songs, you'd swear he meant every word." She smiles wider, eyes sparkling. "I was young, impressionable, and completely enchanted. Gordon had that rare thing, a mix of confidence and gentleness. He could make you feel like the only person in the room, even when 100 people were watching." Then she chuckles, a little wickedly. "And yes, when he sang 'If I Loved You,' I might have believed it for a second or two, maybe longer." 2. Frank Sinatra. Shirley lets out a knowing laugh before the interviewer even finishes saying his name. "Oh, Frank," she says, smiling like the memory itself just winked at her. "You couldn't work in Hollywood in my day and not have a Frank Sinatra story. Everyone did. He was the orbit, and the rest of us just revolved around him. She leans back, eyes shining. The thing about Frank was, he didn't try to be magnetic. He just was. You'd walk into a room, the chatter would quiet, and then you'd realize why. He was there. Perfectly tailored suit, that little smirk, the cigarette balanced just so. He didn't need to speak. He just had to glance your way, and the temperature went up 10 degrees. Shirley laughed softly, shaking her head. He was unpredictable. You never knew what mood you were going to get. But that was part of the charm. One minute he was the life of the party, the next he was quietly humming a tune in the corner, lost in thought. And that voice, velvet and smoke. When he sang, you believed him? Every word, every note, it all sounded personal. She tilts her head as if picturing him again. I met him a few times at parties and events. He had this wonderful way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, even if there were 50 others waiting for his attention. He'd say your name, and somehow it sounded better than when anyone else said it. Her voice softens. Frank had that old-school mix of charm and mystery. You couldn't quite pin him down. And that's what made him unforgettable. He carried a little melancholy with him, even in laughter. It made everything he did feel deeper. Shirley smiles, eyes twinkling. You couldn't resist being a little dazzled. Frank Sinatra was every bit the legend people say he was. A man who didn't just sing the song, he was the song. And let me tell you, darling, no one ever forgot the melody. 3. James Garner. Shirley's smile softens immediately. Now, James Garner, she says, was the kind of man Hollywood doesn't make anymore. Handsome, yes, almost unfairly so. But it was his gentleness that set him apart. He had that quiet, easy confidence that made you feel safe and seen, even in a town full of mirrors. She chuckles, tilting her head at the memory. When we worked together, what struck me most wasn't just his charm, it was his humor. Jim could make an entire crew laugh between takes, and not the big, showy kind of laughter either. It was the kind that came from timing, wit, and kindness. He had this wonderful way of lifting everyone's spirits, just by being himself. She leans back, eyes distant but glowing. He never took himself too seriously, which was rare for a leading man. You'd be in the middle of an emotional scene, and he'd flash that grin, that little half-smile that made you forget you were acting at all. Suddenly, it was just two people, caught up in something real. Her tone deepens, soft with affection. He had an authenticity about him. What you saw on screen was who he was off-screen. No pretense, no ego, just warmth. He treated everyone, from studio heads to extras, with the same respect. And that kind of decency doesn't fade. It lingers. She laughs, a sound equal parts fondness and nostalgia. Oh, he was charming, make no mistake. That voice, that way he'd say your name, like it was the start of a secret, I think half of Hollywood's leading ladies had a soft spot for him. But he earned it, every bit of it. Her eyes brighten. James Garner was the definition of an old-fashioned gentleman. Steady, kind, quietly magnetic. You could stand next to him for 5 minutes and forget every camera, every light. All that existed was the moment. That's what made him special. She pauses, smiling wistfully. He made you believe in goodness. And in Hollywood, that's saying something. 4. Paul Newman. Shirley lets out a soft, almost musical laugh. Paul Newman, she says, and even the way she says it sounds like she's rolling the name across her tongue like a fine wine. You didn't have to meet Paul to fall a little bit in love with him. You just had to see him smile. She shakes her head, eyes glimmering. Those eyes, that grin, they should have been illegal. But what made Paul truly special wasn't his looks, as unbelievable as they were. It was that kindness underneath. He was one of those rare men whose charisma came from decency. He didn't need to act cool, he just was. Her voice softens, almost reverent. I remember the first time I met him. A charity event, I think. He walked into the room and the whole place just brightened. He didn't dominate the space. He elevated it. He had this effortless way of making everyone feel seen. When he shook your hand, he looked right at you, not past you, not through you. At you. That's rare anywhere, but in Hollywood, that's gold. She laughs gently, like she's caught up in the glow of memory. And that voice, smooth, calm, with just a trace of mischief. You always felt like he knew something you didn't, but he was too polite to spoil the fun. He'd crack a joke under his breath, and you'd be laughing for hours afterward, wondering how he managed to charm the entire world and still seem humble. Shirley's tone grows more reflective. What I admired most about Paul was his sense of purpose. He wasn't just a movie star. He was a man who used it. His heart was as strong as his jawline. You could see it in the way he loved his family, the way he gave back, the way he carried himself without ever needing applause. She smiles, eyes softening with warmth. He was proof that you could be extraordinary without ever forgetting how to be human. And that, she says, her voice trailing into a fond sigh, is the most attractive quality of all. She pauses for a moment, that signature mischievous glint returning. And let's be honest, no one, before or since, has ever made a pair of blue eyes look quite like that. 5. Cary Grant. The interviewer barely finishes saying his name before Shirley bursts into a laugh, the kind that sounds like champagne bubbles. Cary Grant, she repeats, savoring the syllables. Now there's a man who made sophistication look effortless. The suit, the voice, the way he carried himself. He could have read a grocery list and still made every woman in America swoon. She leans back, eyes glinting like she's stepped right back into the golden age. Cary was a master of timing, not just on screen, but in life. He knew when to make an entrance, when to offer a compliment, when to let silence do the flirting for him. And that accent? It wasn't just English, it was enchanted. She smiles, shaking her head. I met him at an event once, one of those glittering Hollywood nights where everyone's trying a little too hard to be seen. Cary didn't have to try. He just was. You'd feel it before you even spotted him. That charm that wasn't loud, just quietly magnetic. When he spoke to you, it felt like you were in on a secret that the rest of the room hadn't been invited to. Her tone grows softer, almost reverent. He had this grace, not just in movement, but in spirit. You could see the humor behind the eyes, the kindness behind the polish. He wasn't just debonair, he was genuinely lovely. The kind of man who held your hand like it mattered. She laughs again, gently, shaking her head. I remember thinking, good heavens, this man makes conversation feel like foreplay. She pauses, grinning at her own daring, then adds quickly, but always with class. Always her gaze drifts for a moment, full of warmth. Cary Grant was the dream, that blend of wit, warmth, and just enough mystery to keep you wondering. You never quite figured him out, and maybe that's what made him timeless. He made romance an art form, and everyone lucky enough to share a scene or a dance with him knew it. 6. Rock Hudson. Shirley's whole expression softens when his name comes up. Rock Hudson, she says with a fond smile, the kind that carries both laughter and a touch of longing. He was as kind as he was handsome, and, believe me, that's saying something. She pauses, eyes distant, like she's seeing him again through the haze of time. There was a warmth about Rock that you could feel the second he entered a room. Yes, he was impossibly tall, impossibly good-looking, but that wasn't what made people gravitate toward him. It was the ease, the gentleness. He never made you feel small, not even when he towered over you. Her laugh bubbles up again, and that laugh of his, deep and genuine. You could hear it from across the soundstage and immediately feel better about whatever had gone wrong that day. Rock had a way of making the business, the cameras, the long hours, the pressure, feel lighter, easier. You wanted to be around him. She leans in a little as if confiding something precious. He had this presence that was comforting. He made people feel safe, especially women. That was rare in those days. A man who could be both strong and gentle, who didn't need to prove himself every minute. Rock never competed with anyone. He just was himself, and that was enough to fill any room. Her tone softens further, full of warmth. We shared a few events, a few laughs over the years. He was the definition of grace, both on and off the screen. There was no arrogance, no sharp edges, just sincerity wrapped in charm. You always left a conversation with Rock feeling lighter than when you started it. Shirley's eyes glisten, her smile wistful now. He had a beautiful soul, that's the truth of it. He made you believe in kindness, even in an industry that doesn't always reward it. And that's what people remember most about him. Not just the matinee idol looks, but the heart underneath. She sits back, her voice turning soft and certain. Rock Hudson was one of a kind, a true gentleman, the sort that made you feel lucky just to have shared a little piece of his world. 7. Robert Redford. When his name comes up, Shirley's whole face lights up. Robert Redford, she says slowly, almost savoring it. Now there's a man who defined cool without ever having to say a word. She smiles, a gleam of mischief dancing in her eyes. He had that California ease, sunshine in human form. The hair, the smile, that quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. You know how some people seem to glow from the inside? That was Bob. Her voice grows warm and reflective. He was the kind of leading man who didn't just steal the scene. He deepened it. There was intelligence behind those eyes, a stillness that made you lean in. You could see he was thinking, always, even in silence. That's what made him different from so many others. He wasn't performing charm, he was charm. Shirley chuckles softly. We crossed paths a few times over the years. Premieres, award shows, those rare gatherings where everyone looked polished, but nobody really wanted to stay long. But when Bob walked in, suddenly everyone perked up a little. The room just shifted. He had that effect. People stood a little straighter, smiled a little wider. Even the most jaded Hollywood crowd couldn't resist him. Her gaze drifts for a moment, lost in fond recollection. He was polite to a fault, soft-spoken, gracious, and a little shy, which made him even more irresistible. There was no pretense about him, no swagger, no act, just that natural warmth that comes from knowing exactly who you are. She laughs again, that unmistakable Shirley sparkle still alive after all these years. And those eyes, she says, wagging a finger with a teasing grin. They were dangerous, not in a wild way, but in that slow burn, thoughtful way that sneaks up on you. You'd be halfway through a conversation before realizing you'd completely forgotten what you were saying. Her smile softens into something wistful. Robert Redford was the last of a certain kind of leading man. Thoughtful, artistic, endlessly decent. He reminded you that real charisma isn't about noise, it's about presence. And goodness, she says with a twinkle, doesn't go out of style. She leans back, satisfied, her laughter filling the room once more. There you have it, 7 men who made the movies magical and the memories even better. They were charm, grace, and mischief rolled into one. And darling, she adds with a wink, wasn't it fun while it lasted?